Patrik Laine could be available for trade, according to Pierre LeBrun of The Athletic. Here's what he had to say in his piece when talking about Laine. Quote, "My understanding is that the Columbus Blue Jackets intend to work with Patrik Laine's camp, led by agent Andy Scott of Octagon, to find the star winger a fresh start with a new team. Laine remains in the NHL and NHLPA player assistance program, having sought the help in January. He also recently had a minor shoulder cleanup procedure, but that's not expected to be an issue. The expectation is that he'll be ready to go for next season." Now, Horwat, you wrote a little piece on Laine's availability, and the one thing that I thought of right after reading your piece, right after reading what Pierre LeBrun had written, was this feels familiar. It's a little bit of deja vu for me, because Laine being available at this stage of his career, the player that he is, it feels similar to that of Phil Kessel back in 2015. If you look at the two's careers before Kessel was traded to Pittsburgh and where Laine is right now, Kessel was a top 5 draft pick. At that point, he had played through 2 organizations, Boston and Toronto. He was a 5-time 30-goal scorer, a 7-time 50-point scorer, and he was going into his age 28 season. If you look at Laine, first 2 things remain true. Top 5 draft pick from the Winnipeg Jets. Went through 2 organizations, Winnipeg and Columbus. He's a 3-time 30-goal scorer, even eclipsing the 40-goal mark once or twice, and a 6-time 50-point scorer. The only difference is, and the biggest difference here is, he's going into his age 26 season. So he's a little bit younger. He has that pedigree. It's not an apples-to-apples comparison. They're not the identical players, but right shot guys with a lot of scoring prowess. I feel like there's a lot of similarities in the 2 situations.
Yeah, there is. There's a lot of similarities, and I think what makes the kind of difference too is Kessel was coming from the Boston Bruins, who, at least on the surface, looked like a well-structured organization, to the Leafs, who, again, aren't at least then were probably a bit of a better run ship than they are now. This time around, I mean, Patrik Laine is coming from a disaster locker room in Winnipeg. I mean, who knows what was going on back at that point, but we know since he's left, it's kind of continued to go downhill. The Stars want to leave, except for the fact that they signed 8-year deals. Who knows? And then to the Columbus Blue Jackets, who are notoriously one of the worst run organizations in the NHL right now. You give Laine the sort of push from a successful organization, both in the front office and on the ice. Maybe it wakes up that pedigree that he had in Winnipeg, the 30 to 40 goal scorer, the elite shot that he can bring that he just hasn't been able to bring in Columbus because of one reason or another. Mm-hmm. You stick a guy like Laine on Crosby's wing to finish off some of Crosby's playmaking ability. That's a phenomenal jump. It's as long as those 2 can work together and make magic. That's your Gensel replacement if you really needed it. Or let's say you have to put him on Malkin's wing. Well, Malkin is shown he's good at playing with young, skilled players. Patrik Laine fits that bill, even if he hasn't necessarily shown it over the last few years. He's an enigma of a player. It's really interesting to see kind of how his career has, you don't want to say, completely fallen short of expectations, because he still has so much time left ahead of him. But he's also already proven he can do it. Those first few seasons with Winnipeg were outstanding. It's a matter of finding that game again. He helped to get them to the Western Conference Finals, I think, in Vegas's first year.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, back in 2018, that would have been. Yeah. They went to the Western Conference Final. And Laine, let's not get it twisted. When he came out, it was him and Austin Matthews, that these guys were going to be battling for Rocket Richards for years to come. Obviously, Austin Matthews has been able to maintain that and even more, almost scoring 70 goals this past season. But Laine has run into a couple injuries. And again, that's why I'm like, this is not an apples-to-apples comparison with Phil Kessel, because Kessel was the picture of, I don't want to say health, but he was the picture of availability, right? He did not miss games, whereas Laine has, obviously gone into the NHLPA player assistance program, but also has dealt with some injuries over the past couple of seasons that has affected his availabilities. But as LeBrun said in that, that shouldn't be an issue. At least the shoulder shouldn't be an issue. And you would have to imagine that obviously we've seen players most recently. Who am I trying to think of? He didn't go into the player assistance program actually, but Sam Poulin taking a step away from the game of hockey as well, coming back and having that love for the game again. You just hope that that's what you're getting out of Patrik Laine. Now, as far as the player and the money is concerned, 2 years at $8.7 million, that's your big swing if you're taking it. But here's the thing. And again, this harkens back to the similarities between the Laine situation now and the Phil Kessel situation in 2015. The Penguins have not had somebody to score the quote unquote easy goals since Kessel departed Pittsburgh. Somebody that can just come down, unleash his shot, and more often than not, it's going to be a high danger scoring chance no matter where he's shooting the puck from. They haven't had that type of scoring threat in a long, long time. The question then becomes, how much are you willing to pay for it? Because one move is not going to fix all the Penguins' problems. Going out and getting, Phil Kessel at that time was seen as, this is the piece that's going to change the trajectory of the organization. This is the piece that's going to get them back to being a cup contender this season. And lo and behold, they won 2 cups in the first 2 years. I don't think Laine is that piece for the Penguins, but I do see the similarities in needing that high upside, 40 goal potential sniper that is just going to become a easy goal scorer, quote unquote, somebody that is going to come in, and if you give him an iota of time, he's going to make the other team pay, and he's going to put it in the back of the net.
Yeah, and $8.7 million doesn't even strike you as an overpay, because it's pretty well known that the Jackets are trying to move him now. What does that mean? They're going to have to likely retain some of it. So you take that 8.7, maybe it's a 7. Maybe you're getting Laine for $7 million. Who knows how much they are willing to retain? Who knows what kind of trade happens here? Or if you take the full 8.7, maybe you find a way to get a problem contract off of your roster too. I mean, who knows where the Jackets are trying to go this upcoming season? Just fired their head coach yesterday.
Yeah.
So maybe they are in one more year of rebuild, or 2 more years of rebuild. Maybe they are trying to build something right now. If they're trying to build something right now, maybe they're okay with taking a Riley Smith in return, the veteran presence who can add to their depth, and maybe bang and crash a couple of goals where they need it. Whereas if they're committing to another year of a rebuild, maybe they take the Ryan Graves contract, some part retained, maybe go from there. Again, I'm spitballing. I truthfully know nothing of what the Jackets are trying to do or what they're trying to get in return for a guy like Laine. It's a disaster of an organization that needs to get its, train back on the tracks. And if it takes another just awful year, they may have to sit through it. But moving Laine seems to be that start of the commitment, and who knows what kind of package they're looking for. But those are just 2 names I'm throwing out because Pens fans keep wanting to see them traded. And Riley Smith seems pretty likely to be dealt.
Yeah, there's a chance Riley Smith is dealt before we finish recording this. Ryan Graves, on the other hand, I think there's a little bit of false hope for people that want to see him get traded. But again, we've talked about that ad nauseum. But I think that when you look at this situation, you're not getting Patrik Laine for cheap, especially if you want salary retained, because he has that extra year as well. Yeah. It might cost you a first-round pick. It might not, but if it doesn't, it's going to cost you a pretty solid prospect, of which the Penguins now have a couple. But at the same time, Kyle Dubas has mentioned time and time again, what does he want? He wants picks. He wants prospects. He wants young players that are getting close or at the NHL level. He's going to have to give up a couple of those if he wants to go get Patrik Laine, and not to mention the fact that this is a Laine that, while, the upside is very, very high. The upside is 40 goals, potentially, 70 to 80 points, maybe even more if he's playing on a line with Crosby. But it is a gamble, and it is going to be a costly gamble. And if it doesn't work out, it's something that does, I'm not going to say sets your organization back years, but it's something that does set your organization back if you bring in a player like that under that cap hit with the acquisition cost. So it's going to be interesting to see where he lands. I would think that he ends up getting traded, but at the same time, again, you mentioned it, Don Waddell is in there, and he is changing things, hopefully for the better. I mean, that organization has been poorly run, like you mentioned, for a while. Waddell is, known now, has a track record of building a very consistent ship down in Carolina. Can he do that in Columbus? And is Laine part of that vision? I don't know. So we'll have to wait and see what happens with that. But I do think there are some similarities between 2015 Kessel and 2024 Patrik Laine, especially if he ends up coming to the Pittsburgh Penguins. I think the fit would be very similar as well. Power play specialist, top six guy, pure sniper. The only thing that also is different as well, I've said like three things, but the other difference as well is when Phil Kessel came to Pittsburgh, the one thing he showed off that you didn't really see as much in Toronto was his playmaking ability, was his facilitation of other players, was his assist numbers going up and up and up. I'm not sure Patrik Laine has that in his game, but again, he's played for the Jets, and the last couple of seasons he's played for an organization where, I forget Johnny Gaudreau was that good of a hockey player until I saw him at World Championships. That's what Columbus does, and that's what they've done the last couple of years. I hate to do that to him, but that's the stigma around the Columbus Blue Jackets. So we'll have to obviously monitor that situation. I wouldn't say it's likely for the Penguins. I would just say that there are some similarities. And of course, Kyle Dubas said last year when we were talking about the Erik Karlsson rumors, he said, if there's a player of that caliber, I would not be doing my job correctly if I didn't at least reach out. So, that tells me that he's at the very least going to reach out and see what the price is for Patrik Laine.